Hello, I'm Alex OK, and welcome to episode 30 of my look at the Japanese tech tree in War Thunder. Today I'll be looking at the Ki-84. The Army Type 4 fighter, or Hayate, Gale, was codenamed Frank by the Allies. It started its development in 1942 to replace the Ki-43 in service, and first flew in March of 43. It wouldn't be accepted into service, however, until 1944, hence the Type 4 designation, and around 3,500 would eventually be built. It's powered by the Nakajima Ha-45 Homer engine, which at sea level produced 1,970 horsepower. This is enough to make it the fastest Japanese fighter in service, with the Japanese testing reaching around 624 km an hour, that's 387 miles per hour, and the US post-war testing with high-octane fuel reached 680 km an hour, or 422 miles per hour. There are three variants in War Thunder, the Ko, the Otsu and the Hai. Here I am flying the Ko model at 5.3. It's armed with two Ho-103 machine guns in the nose and two Ho-5 20mm cannons in the wings, which had 700 and 300 ammo respectively. As you can see, it's quite a good fighter, as dogfighting, energy fighting, it can even boom and zoom, as I dogfight with these Spitfires, not P-51. Here I'm switching targets repeatedly, as I can't decide what to go for. I do eventually settle on this P-51. And generally I use just the machine guns on their own if I'm at range, but I do a little bit of firing with a cannon and get the flap off that P-51. As I come back round to engage the Spitfires. Though one appears to be on my 6 now, you see I go into a dive to attack this Spitfire, try and get him off the zero. That Spitfire is still on me, and he managed to get into my only cowling as I kill his squad mate. He rolled down, see immediately outdiving the Spitfire. This plane, well, you can see I've reached over 800 km an hour in a dive and I've not redlined yet, and I'm able to pull out of it. Although the elevator's authority isn't great at that sort of speed, it's perfectly acceptable. So I come back round to help the Zero engage that Spitfire. This plane also climbs incredibly well, as you may have noticed. I was actually at more or less the same altitude as those Spitfires when I started engaging them. Now, while I'm closing on the Spitfire, I'm actually keeping an eye on that Su-6 because, well, I don't want to drop onto the Spitfire only to have a 37mm round go through my aircraft. So I will actually wind up switching to attacking this Su-6. Trying to drop below him there, get out of the way of his rear gunner. Or pulling up and circling around, looking back, making sure he's not trying to get guns on target. That's a bit by did wind up crashing into the ground, which is a shame for a Zero. A few hits from there as the Zero goes head on with the Su-6. Only bit of damage to the flap. As I roll back around on the SU. I get attacked from behind, but manage to get a lucky dodge by his second Spitfire, who heads immediately back to his base. The Zero getting the kill on Su-6, and that P-51 I was engaging earlier also crashed. There was a lot of crashing enemies in this match. So I believe what left is that Wyvern, a Yak-3, that Spitfire there, and that SO-8000. Is it 8000? Could be 80,000. Anyway, that's what's left. I turn around to help the Zero and BF-109 engage this Wyvern. although I'm not needed because he crashes into the ground. Instead I've climbed to altitude and am watching that SO 8000 take off. I'm going to drop in behind him and get a quick kill, which he doesn't appreciate at all. But, well, my engagement time was pretty long, so you probably should have seen me. It happens to be all the time. How good it is 8000. The Ho-103 machine guns are pretty ineffective, as are most Japanese 50 cals when being fired through the propeller. The very slow rate of fire on them and the fact that they don't do much damage. But the cannons are very serviceable. So here I'm helping my friendly BF-109 engage that Yak-3, also keeping an eye out for where that Spitfire is. These are the last two planes. Make sure the BF-109 isn't engaging as I make my pass on the Yak-3. But the Spitfire, as you can see, goes straight into a climb for me. Let's quickly climb up before he decides not to risk stalling out. And as I drop into him, he does the correct thing and turns underneath me, which, well, I don't want to follow in, otherwise I'd wind up in the trees. So, let's go back up to reset, with that Yak-3 trailing me. Fortunately the BF-109 is now on him. What you should be doing in a 2v2 situation, especially if you do start the altitude, don't slow down to get onto someone's sticks, but rather wait for your team to bait the other ones up. As you see, if that Yak-3 had gone up for the BF-109 I would have had him, so that forces him down. Keeps our energy advantage as the Spitfire climbs again for me. But again, I have too much of an altitude advantage and turn around to dive back on him. It's the same thing again and turns underneath me. This time I don't even bother getting anywhere near that as the BF-109 swishes past. So I go up to reset my attack on Spitfire. Waiting to see what that Yak-3 does before I commit to diving. Closing on the spit as he heads up, but again he turns underneath me and I don't want to risk flying into the trees. So I go up again to reset. Turning over puts me in another decent position to attack the Spitfire, but again he turns underneath me. Commit a bit more, but then I see the BF-109's going for him, so I decide to leave off, and I notice I've only got just over 3 minutes of fuel left, so I decide to vacate the area. Besides, there is a Zero coming in to relieve me, so the BF-109 should be okay, given he's got the altitude advantage, as that Yak-3 attempts to start engaging me. And he is actually closed quite close. The Yak-3's got very good engine power at this sort of altitude. So I go into a slight dive to maintain the speed as that BF-109 closes on his 6 and the Zero closes on his front. However, with him closing rapidly, I do decide to make some more evasive manoeuvres here. The combat flaps on this plane are very strong, you don't need to worry about ripping them unless you're going at like 800 kilometers an hour. Dodge the Yak, I don't attempt to engage him because, well, with only 2 minutes of fuel left now, I need all of that to get home. The BF-109 is able to take out that Spitfire, and essentially I spend the rest of the match gliding home, which I do manage to make with very little fuel to spare, but that's really the end of the combat in that match, so I'll switch over to this one, where I'm flying the Otsu model with the 4 Ho-5 cannons. and down below me you'll see an LA7 taking out two TAR 152Hs, who were climbing after this P47, who initially I thought was actually just doing a really good job baiting, but it turns out he's just AFK. I considered going after that LA7, but I decided I didn't want to dive an LA7 only to have a P47 turn on my 6. So I decided to take out the P47, and it's really around here that I think that this guy is AFK, which I'm pretty sure he is. So I get relatively close before making a terrible shot, another terrible shot, and then setting him on fire. Give him one more just to make sure, and then I turn away to leave him to burn to death. As you can see again, this plane has had absolutely no problem climbing to 6,000 metres. And I turn around to engage that LA7 who took out those two TAR 152s. There we go. The LA7's made his move to engage that JU-288. Just making sure there's no one coming to help him as I dive on that as I dive on the LA7. See, again, reaching over 800 kilometers an hour without redlining and keeping decent movability as I finally get the kill for that P47. Closed rapidly on the LA7B. Dodges my first shot and just terrible shooting in general on my part. See, the elevator's pretty stiff at over 700 kilometers an hour, so I go up into the vertical before turning back over onto the LA7. Get a fairly lucky hit there, as I forced the LA7 to manoeuvre a bit to avoid shooting me. This should hopefully bleed his speed. You can see I'm now closing quite rapidly on him. And my shots there blow off something moderately important to him, so I get a crit, and then take his wing off there. Cut away because, well, the rest of this was just me climbing and going home for fuel. And as you can see, the last remaining opponent is that TU2. I'm pretty sure he's going to go for me, but he's a twin-engine bomber who's presumably still got his bombs on him, so I climb over the top of him and turn a little. This will throw off his aim, and then I drop back on him. So he turns up to try and engage me again. A nice hit there, which sets him on fire, and I extend away. My friendly's coming to help, and obviously that TU2 managed to put the fire out almost immediately. So well, try again. As he tries to engage the Fokker Wolf, he goes up into the vertical. Well, not quite the vertical, but he's trying to gain more altitude. So I get more hits into him. Get another crit, and he loses his tail control there. Pitch him down into the forest, and I get the kill for that as well. Right, I'll switch over to the final bit of footage, which is the high model, which has two HO 155 30 mils in the wing, only 60 rounds per gun, but these things kill what they hit. You don't really need to worry about them sparking all that much. So here, this P47 is trying to catch this JU-288, and I have to drop from quite a high altitude in order to get him, but oh well. Bad shooting on my part.
unfortunately the P-47 doesn't really go for a reversal on me, and I'm able to close back in on him. And there's also an AD4 down there, so I need to watch out for him, although he isn't flying at me. I do decide that I should take out the AD4 before chasing the P-47, because, well, I don't want to be taken out by the AD4, who goes onto the vertical, but I had a lot more energy than him, so quite an easy kill there. P-47's coming back in. I don't want to go head on with that, so we roll underneath him again. Turn back in on him as he goes up into the vertical. I'm able to drop quickly on his 6 and blow off his tail. Although you're really going to see the kill there because all the other on the screen. Right, cut away here because, well, all the enemies are up high. The F-8F was hovering over our airfield and an enemy Focke-Wulf had dived down there amongst our bombers. I decided to pull the F-8, who had basically the same amount of altitude as me, back towards my friendly J7W in order to make it not a fair fight. See, the Bearcat's pretty effective at this altitude. He's closing pretty rapidly on me. But I do now have the altitude over him. With my J7W closing fast, I decide to take him up into the vertical as much as I can. But he changes target over to the J7W, so I turn back round. Not great at turning at sub 300 km an hour, but it's still a more manoeuvrable plane than most at low speeds. The Bearcat goes more or less into a dive. I do a quick check there to make sure I am dropping on the 6 and he's not coming up towards me. But no, he's going to dive right down to the deck. See, once I hit around 800 km an hour, I do wind up throttling right back because I don't want to overspeed too much. Although it doesn't seem to want to go much over 800 km an hour, which is very nice. You see lovely AA getting a slight hit on me there. There's an enemy IL-10 and TU-2, which I didn't want to go head on with either of those, so I go up into the vertical as that Bearcat comes back round to try and get me, but, well, I have a lot more energy than him. So I loop over here, although the Bearcat does get a hit because I loop too early and he doesn't stall out. This is about where he stalls out, so I probably should have gone up a bit more, and I've actually lost my landing gear there. Still, it could have been substantially worse. So I turn back round to engage the Bearcat, flying for me again. Only get a hit with the 20 mils there. If that had been a 30 mil, it would have been a lot worse for him. Bearcat dives again, trying to get away from us, but well, there's two of us in the J7 and the Key 84, very fast planes, so you're not getting away, although he does almost force an overshoot there. They go back up into the vertical. I should probably mention that the Otsu model has a battle rating of 5.7 and the Hyatt model has a battle rating of 6.3. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's 6.3. Which means it can see jets, which it does okay against, really. So as high tier props go, I don't feel facing jets is too much of a hardship for it. Bearcat goes back into the vertical for me again, but I don't. Well, maintain my altitude rather than losing it like I did last time where I lost my landing gear. And now I drop back onto the Bearcat 6. He rolled underneath me though, so bring it up again to reset. Check where the Bearcat is. And drop back in on him. Down to the 20 mils there, get a crit onto his elevator. And he flies into the trees. That was, however, the last of my ammunition. And I'm leaking oil, so I go to RTB and have to make a nice belly landing. But that's essentially the entire game. The enemy attackers wind up winning on points. So, that's been the Key 84. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.